Hello, hello, hello. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Got 3 streams up and running today. Looks like we don't have anybody in YouTube today, so they'll just be watching after the fact. But we're going to lower the music and we're going to get this rolling here. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that off. And we'll get this started. Can you hear me okay over there? I see. Yes, sounds good. Hold on one second. Okay, so we're going to roll right into this. Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays here on Landy's Crypto Corner. I'm your host, Landy, and we're going to take a look at Bitcoin on the longer term timeframes and weave that into our daily analysis. We'll also look at some altcoins, traditional markets. We'll look at Dixie, and we'll probably take a look at gold today as well. Bitcoin is still hanging out on this support level, which is the breakout area. So this was the high at around 25,200 or so. That was the area that broke out that formed the two top structure that we are currently have broken down from. We have not taken out that low there at 24,750 just yet here. And there's actually no guarantee that it will, but we're going to go over a few things here in today's live stream. And for those of you watching this after the fact, we're going to go over kind of what the outlook is on the daily first, and then we'll take a look at some of the higher term time frames and see how that has how that lines up with our daily analysis here. So Bitcoin is right on a weekly support here. And this weekly support, pretty important. That is the breakout area. So about $26,000 on the weekly. So do want to see closures above here to give Bitcoin at least the opportunity to bounce if it can keep closing above $26,000, and then take out that 26,750 weekly above it, along with this little bit of a wick high from the move down on the Friday candle. And that wick high is coming in at around 26. Hold on one second. Got to move this. That's coming in at 26,834. If we do see that, then I would be looking for Bitcoin to run to the lower first by the monthly overhead resistance here at around 27,200 to this daily just above there at around 27.5. If we did see closures above there, then I would be looking for another leg up to around that weekly at $28,000, and the basis band there just above it would also be a viable target at around 28,400 to 500, which is coming in at that daily overhead resistance now. This was the support structure that broke down last week after losing 28K on the weekly. We did see a lower term time frame bounce at 27.5. That did fail, and when that failed, that kicked off a liquidation cascade down to the current low wick. So at this particular moment, we can see that Bitcoin is trading above the lower second standard deviation on the daily, and that is coming in at around 25,800. So if we did see this 26K rather break down, and we have already tested that lower second almost to a T there at 25,814. So just slightly below it by a few bucks. If we did see a closure below there, that would indicate that we're going to see Bitcoin test down to the low at 25,200 into this daily support area at around 25,1 to 24,8. If we did see that fail, then we would be looking significantly lower over time. And that would be around that 25.3 weekly, the 23.750 weekly, and the 23.3 monthly. This is kind of the last area that the bulls have to defend. Otherwise, it's going to be, well, we're going to be looking much, much lower. And that would be down here at the next area at the weekly here at $21,800 to $22,000, $21,000, and then there's 20,400 to 500, and then the 19,500, which is also a wick low. That would be this wick low over here. So be aware of that. Now, even if Bitcoin bounces and has an aggressive bounce to the upside, I'm not really looking at this as bullish until we see closures back above 28.4 to 5 that also can test up and take out that wick high at around 29,665 to 29.7. That would be very, very bullish. Now you will hear a lot of bear trap talk if you did see 27.5 taken out on a close to around $28,000. But realistically, Bitcoin has to take out the last high on the daily for me to get bullish again, or to at least be, excuse me, to at least be looking for bullish setups. And that would be, higher lows. Preferably what we want to see is some sort of a lower high down here, which, technically on a close, depending on how this structure develops, we could see a lower high down here. But realistically, you want to see it bounce up, get a lower high, come down, find support, and then take out the lower high than this high wick over here. So that would be the bullish scenario, the bullish setup in my opinion. And when looking at the longer term time frames, we are seeing, there is a bit of a meme that's going around now, and that is the trend line. I'll show you the trend line. I'm seeing it quite a lot lately. We have, I believe we've called this out here, and that would be this trend line from the lows that also encompasses the 2019-2020 low, and that was March of 2020. So there is a bit of a meme trend line there, which would give Bitcoin some room to move down even further and not break trend line structure in terms of higher low macro time frame structure. And yes, I'm not really a big fan of that because you can see deviations and then things pop right back up. But in this case, if you wanted to know where this lines up on the longer term time frames with support and resistance, if we look at this trend line, it actually intersects with that monthly there at around, this would be, we have to go to log scale actually. Log scale is what this trend line is following here. Hold on one moment. So just to kind of go back and show you, log scale, we have the wick low in 2020 and then the current low structure. And when looking at this in terms of support and resistance, that would be our 23.3 area or about there. And that's that monthly. So when we look at this on our other chart here that's a little bit cleaner, that would be this monthly close open structure here where we have the doji. And that is, that is kind of the line in the sand before getting down to the low side structure at around that 20,500 or so. There are low wicks in here around 21.3 to 4. Then we've got that 19.5 area that is really the low side structure here, around that $19,000 to $20,000 is the close opens down here on the lows. And then, of course, we've got the high wicks here coming in at 18,350. That was prior to the breakout from the actual major low that was set back here in January on that big January monthly. Now, when looking at the monthly, as we do have that closing pretty soon, not this week, but next week, we can see that momentum remains to the upside here. Let's go ahead and turn on the BA reverse Stochs. You can see that the pivot is $21,000 now. So if Bitcoin does violate that momentum pivot for Stochs, that is that's going to spell probably a trip back to the lows to test, and maybe even lower. Now I'm not totally convinced that that's what we're seeing play out here. Bitcoin is still hanging out above that 25,214, 24,750 area. So I'm not too concerned about that just yet. When looking at the 4-week, which we just no, we didn't see this just open, but that is also at 21,500 on the momentum pivot. The 3-week will be closing in about 20 days with that 4-week, and that momentum pivot is facing down below $29,000. So still some time to get above that pivot. We see that the 2-week, which will be closing this weekend, is pivoted at 28,215. So at that area overhead. Let's go ahead and just show that real quick here. So that would be just above this weekly here. So a recovery there by the end of the week would be, fairly bullish to at least go and test up further, and at least test that daily overhead resistance that was holding pretty decent support before it sliced right through at around that 28,405. So we do have a bit of confluence there, and then the weekly is going to be at 30,136, which is implying that this is fairly bearish until we see the weekly turn. So, it's not a death sentence just yet. We have not seen a breakdown that could occur this week, but we could also see a bounce this week as well. On the 5-day here, I do want to note that is a little bit closer at 29,340 or so, and still well away from price action at the moment, 29,300 on the 4-day. But we do have the 3-day showing a little bit of a different look here. 3-day Stochs is down here at around that 26,325. So still facing down. Bitcoin is still trading below the pivot for the 3-day. Now the 3-day is closing in 1 day after today's closure. So we'll see the 3-day close with Tuesday's candle. And I do believe there's a Jackson Hole meeting with Fed Powell. Yes, on the 25th. And then we have durable goods orders tomorrow. No, I'm sorry. The 5th is not, I'm lying. Today's the 21st, not the 25th. So that would actually be, what day is that going to be? It's going to be on Friday is his speech. So, if Bitcoin does start to recover this week, I would be aware of that speech on Friday, because he is going to be giving his outlook for the economy, and, the market may react. That 3-day is going to be something to watch, though, on the Tuesday close, as the next close would come in on that Friday. So if we do see a cross back to the upside, then you want to see the confirmation that Friday that it fully turns, and that would be a mean reversion play on the 3-day. And if we look at the Bollinger Band set, you can see that, Bitcoin typically doesn't spend too much time below the lower second here. And That is now coming in at around $27,000 on the 3-day, and the lower first is coming in at 28,200. So that's going to update tomorrow. The lower second will likely be closer to, well, especially if Bitcoin does hang out in this area where the lower third is at around $26,000, that we might see that lower second basically right on top of the wicks where price currently is trading at. And that will be that will likely, if Bitcoin can go sideways and regain that lower second, start to show a bit of a mean reversion setup. If we also see the Stochastic pivot turn on the next 3-day or the next 2-3-day closures, so tomorrow's and then Friday's. The 2-day candle did just open. The lower second is now at 26,500 or so. It's 26,450 to 26,500. Again, same kind of look. If it does get regained, we would be, looking for the mean reversion setup. Got to see a low put in here, so at least closing above the last 2-day wick high, which is coming in at 26,296, so 26,300. And then take that lower second out to the upside at around that 26,450 to 26,500, and then that would give it the opportunity to try and test where the lower first is, which is currently above the daily overhead resistance here at 27.7. I suspect it's going to be right around 27 to 27.5, which is this monthly overhead resistance, and this daily here just overhead above that weekly resistance at 26,750. So that is something to pay attention to. That is going to be closing on Wednesday's candle. And if we look at the momentum pivot, it's currently sitting at 27,300. So that is to say that if it can regain that area around the lower first and not reject it, then we would be looking for a little bit more mean reversion back to the basis band. And I'm going to talk about this white moving average that's kind of oscillating around the basis band in just a moment. And then, of course, the daily that we just spoke about. That 27,160 where the lower first is, the lower second right there at 25,800. It's going to kind of be the zone that we want to pay attention to. If we do see the lower first regained, right, then we will be looking at the overhead resistances as the next viable areas to the upside. And if we do see the 25,200 to 24,750 area breakdown, then it's most likely going to go and test some of those areas that we just talked about earlier, and then we'll have to see the reaction again. I'll go back to it here. That 25,300 monthly, that's really the line in the sand for the bulls. Below there, I think that things fall much further down into the lower $20,000 area. Maybe even the mid to high $19,000 area. As it stands right now, though, the daily momentum pivot is at 25,856. So, basically that was tested today. If we do see an initial cross up, that is not a signal in and of itself. We need to see a low put in on the daily. And then you want to see a completed cross at the end of Tuesday's candle. So that is basically what I'm going to be watching for today and into tomorrow's closures. That 3-day and daily are going to be the big ones. And if we did see a low put in here, from where Bitcoin is trading, I would want to see... you're going to most likely see low put in around this, a close above this open at 26,630. Then we start looking at that lower first, around 27 to 27.5, excuse me. So that's going to be the big ones and the big time frames to be watching for before we speak again, which will be on Wednesday's live stream. Of course, I have the Bitcoin in 60 seconds videos every day. I did have to take a little bit of time this past weekend, so Friday, Saturday, I did not have a video for you. My apologies. Sunday I did, leading in or for today's price action. Did have a little bit of a medical issue going on, but everything's good and I'm here. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Ethereum chart real quick here, because it might give us an idea of what to be looking out for on Bitcoin. Not always. There was decent volume in on this low. Now, of course, Ethereum did wick below the prior low at around 1617, 1620 area, and has been closing above that prior low. Now, what is its Stochastic pivot though? It does look as though it might try to get a cross back up. It's got a cross into currently. So, we do see that momentum might start showing that it can cross up here on any closure today above 1606. I would still take that as an initial cross, and targets would be back to the lower first. And of course, if it did close above these wicks here at around 1700, then that's the logical target at around 1720 to 1725. If it does close above there, I'd be looking for it to test up in and around the basis area, 1750 to 1800. If it can regain 1800, well, that's a beautiful bounce. Most likely, this would look a lot more like a bear trap. If it can regain that overhead resistance, especially the breakdown candle here at 1805. If we did see closures above there, it would look much more like a bear trap, rather, not a bull trap, bear trap than anything else. Of course, nothing doing right now until it's above this last lower high wick at around 1876. So, but the momentum is showing that it does have it's a little bit further ahead in terms of its ability to look like it can cross up than Bitcoin, at least currently, as it is crossed into at the moment. Yeah, well, Bitcoin is still facing down. So need to see a low set here. So what I'd be watching for is closures above 1700. And if we do see any closures below the wick lows here in the lower second at 1650 or so to 1640, then I'd be looking for the low wick to get tested again around 1600 to 1540 down there, and fill it out, come back to it later. When looking at something like a 2-day on Ethereum, we are seeing actually Stochastic has pointed up 1644. So this is actually going against momentum. If it does close like this in the next 2-day candle here. And did I make a mistake? 2 days going to close tomorrow with Tuesday's candle, as is. So I'm sorry, I misspoke. Tuesday's going to have the 2-day, 3-day candles across the board. So my apologies. But the 2-day lower second standard deviation is right overhead at that 1686. If we did see closures above there, that would also begin to look like a nice mean reversion play, at least back to wherever the lower first is. It's currently at 1760, and then come back to it after that, right? And then if it does drop the 2-day wick lows, which would be that 1673, then we're looking for it to fill out the current wick low, maybe lower. There is a bit of there's a couple trend lines here that I had drawn before. Is it close to them? Yes. Do they matter? Right now, no. It's all about the volatility setup. And, this is expansion to the downside. So unless it's blunted by getting back above the lower second here, it's just continuation. And trend for volatile trends to the downside or upside are typically going to, in this case, I'll give you the example of the downside, can regain that lower first to even basis and still continue trend to the downside. And depending on where the upper first is, if the upper first is below, for instance, this last lower high at 1876, which it's currently not, it is above it, but that would also be an area that you could see act as resistance and still maintain downside trend. And that's, Bitcoin and Ethereum looking a little bit different here in terms of their expansion setup. But the big one here is going to be the weekly on Ethereum. It is right at the lower second. So if it can, by the end of the week, get back above 1750, or next week, hang out above that lower second and then recover above the lower first, would start to look a little bit better. And we would see further upside tests, most likely back in and around that basis in the 1850 to 1876 area. As it stands right now, this is, downside angled below 1808. And if we did see closures back above, that would be a nice cross back up. But as it stands right now, that is pretty far away from price action. 2-day is 1644. What's the 3-day looking like? 1588, and it's got an initial cross up already. So this would, closures above 1588 by tomorrow's candle close on the 3-day would turn this back to the upside. So that would actually look pretty good for at least a bounce and a retest of the breakdown area. And then if it can cut right through there, then we come back to it and evaluate from there. Let's go ahead and look at traditional markets. We've got Dow. That's the 3-day. We don't need the 3-day. We want the daily. And we can get rid of volume here, as that isn't going to show up correctly for this chart currently, at least. It does show up correctly. It's just that it's not helpful, I should say. We can see that we have so far seen a deviation of that support area, which is a support resistance zone at 34,464, currently trading just below it. And if it can reverse here and try back up, that would be seen as an initial deviation, and then we look for any possible failures to the upside, right? So lower highs. In this case, we've got our lows, we've got lower highs here, and then a lower low. So you'd be looking for another lower high to maintain the downtrend. And from there, then you look at this low, and does it pass this low or not? If it passes this low, it's continuation. If it can higher low its way out and then take out any kind of a lower high than this last lower high, then we'd be looking at a bit of a consolidation and then a trend break and possible shift. As it stands right now, it's kind of right in the areas that we've been talking about. I had mentioned that if this area was lost, we're likely to see it test down into these highs over here, and that is exactly what we have seen. So right into these lower highs over here. And I do suspect that it's currently trading at 34,463, and the momentum pivot is currently 34,825 here. So that will be something to pay attention to. If Dow continues to close below the lower second here, which is at 34,461, then I'd be looking for it to continue to run these wick lows, which would increase the chance that it could break down from there. And but we are going to see this, of course, update after close today and then open of New York session tomorrow. If it does bounce and take out the wick highs here, I would be calling this a temporary low structure at around 34,587. So basically 34.6, anywhere above there. I would look for it to test this close open, or well, it's not really a close open, it's a close at around 34,765 to the lower first standard deviation at around 34,800. And then come back to it, and we'll take a look at this on Wednesday. But it is getting down there pretty deep on the daily in terms of momentum. but that doesn't mean much. The 2 days probably in the driver's seat right now. That is the lower first. So this would be a good area for it to bounce from and try to at least head up from the daily 2-day perspective. But I suspect it's pretty heavily downside angled. Yeah, 35,354 to turn that Stoke pivot back up. And it's a little ways away from there. So a little over 1,000 points. So that will be something to follow up on with you guys on Wednesday as well, because that is closing with today's candle. So that is going to update and be closer to where price is currently trading. And when looking at NASDAQ, we can see that it did deviate. So this one deviated the SR level, and it is trading above on the daily to the lower first standard deviation. So nice bounce, a little bit of a deviation of this low over here and the support resistance zone. And it's currently trading at just under 15,000 at 14,936. If it can start closing back above that lower first standard deviation, I would look for it to head to the next area around 15,000. If it can regain 15,000, which is this close open, this open here to that lower high, maintaining this downtrend. But overall, I would be looking for it to test somewhere around the basis band. That's currently at 15,257. I suspect that's going to be around 15,100 or so. If it can take out this high, it's probably going to be around this high, actually, 15,200. If it can take out this high, then we start looking up a little bit further to this high side structure where this low is coming in at 15,275, which is currently where the basis band is. And then we can just start marching up and targeting that low at just under 15,500 there at 15,425. Now the momentum pivot is going to be facing up for NASDAQ here, and it is confirmed. So 14,764. So basically it loses the lows. It's continuation down, right? That 14,700 area. If it loses that at the current lows, be looking for further downside, probably pretty aggressive further downside. And what's the 2-day looking like here? The 2 days at 15,100, just at the areas that I was looking at for the daily candles. So, nice little bounce. Let's see what comes of it. The move is still developing in terms of the possible bounce and a low being set. And this low would come on bullish divergence from this low over here. And that's not going to populate on most indicators because it was so long ago at this point. But structurally, if you're looking for bullish divergences, this would be a continuation drive. So lower low, higher low. We've got a higher low, lower low on the RSI there. So that would be a bullish divergence. And I suspect if NASDAQ's looking like this, then SPY's looking like it's going to try to bounce, and it has been trying to bounce today. And it did confirm a 3-candle low structure like NASDAQ there. And if it's going to maintain this, this mean reversion, got to see it get back above this this open here at 441 where the lower first is coming in. And then we can start targeting around 443 to the basis at 447, 448 area around this last little high here on a close, which, yeah, it's coming in at 448. So that would be the next big area to target if it is going to continue. If it is going to reject, it's probably going to be around that lower first at 441.50. And, as long as it's above even 430 to 431, which is this low over here, and this this trend line support from this high back here, then, it's fine for now. I suspect it's got a Stoke turn. It does. 437 is going to be the pivot. So 437 is very, very close to where post market is trading right now at 438.93. So, back below the lower second here at 434, I do suspect it's going to run that 430 to 431 area, and even possibly down to the 428 area where the lower third is currently coming in. But it could still test the low side structure if it does not break this Friday candle open at 433, and it's still fine. If it does break it, then it's going to be heading down to those areas that I'm talking about. The 2-day, I suspect, is closing with today's candle, which would be the Tuesday candle here. And lower second bounce looks fine. This is what you want to see. It does need to get above that lower first at 440 to go test the basis at 446 to 448. So yeah, all lining up. And if it did get above their upper first on the 2-day is right there at the top side of this support resistance zone at 252 to 253. So yeah, that's actually all lining up pretty darn well, to be honest. And this is most likely coinciding with probably a shorter term pullback, shorter term time frame pullback, maybe a daily pullback for Dixie. And yeah, so this is the 2-day chart, but let's go over to the daily here. Dixie is came right up to this high side structure. I'd mentioned last week that I did think it was going to swing this high. And if it did start closing above there, then we target the next high side structure in the $400 area to $400 area, 104 area. Man, $400. If Dixie's at $400, things are either really good or really bad in the world. So it's that would be the 104 area, around where the upper second currently is showing around 103.90 to 104 to around 104.50 to 104.69 up there. Nice. Now, if it does start losing the daily upper first standard deviation here at 103.18, I would look for some mean reversion back to the basis band, which is currently coming in at 102. So you can give it some room. 102.46 currently to this close open high at around 102.60. So maybe even just the wicks there at 102.84. That would kind of be my zone of interest for Dixie. And this is, on the weekly, I was looking at this. This is looking like it could break out on the weekly from a little bit of a meme momentum trend line there. But on the daily, we can see that Stoke is headed down. Now, even though it is headed down at where the Stoke pivot is 103.50, if we look at the 2-day, I do suspect that the 2-day is looking still pretty strong. It is above the upper first here. Yeah, so the door is open on the 2-day, which is going to be closing for Dixie here in about 2 hours and 37 minutes. It is going to keep the door open as long as it's above the upper first. The door is open to go test that upper second, which is the 104.25 area. And on the 2-day, that's right around this prior high. And in fact, I believe it is right around the close. There it is. So the door would still be open there. But if we did see it fall below the 2-day upper first, along with the daily upper first at around 103.15 in this case, where the daily is coming in at 103.18, then I would be looking for some mean reversion. And that might coincide. We do see a possible bounce setup and mean reversion setup in traditional markets and Bitcoin and cryptos. We'll take a look at gold in here in just a minute. But I do suspect that is probably going to all happen at the same time if it is going to happen. So we're probably looking at a little bit of mean reversion across the board for everything at the moment. And we are starting to see the etchings of that. Now, the 2-day will turn down on any closures below 102.28. So this thing still got room. It's probably going to update to around 103 or the deep 102 area, like 102.75 on the momentum pivot to the to 103. If we did see both the daily and 2-day turn down at that pretty big overhead resistance here for Dixie, then there might be a little bit of relief across the board in store. Not a guarantee, though. It can still be heading down and everything still head down with it. But it is something to pay attention to. Now, when looking at gold here, Gold is doing much of what we talked about. Swing this low. It's currently trading back above it. This low is coming in at that 1893, and gold is trading at 1894.46 currently. You know, it's still bearish below the lower first at around 1906.99. If it can put in a low, that's going to happen from here, any closures above 1901. But you're likely to see the next day's candle, if it does trade up above today's wick high at 1898, that would be the area to pay attention to. And then look towards that 1901 low set, lower first at 1906. If that is regained, you can start looking at the close opens just above there at 1910 to 1914. But realistically, I would be looking further up to around the basis band, this wick high area at 1930 to 1933, and then come back to it. Momentum pivot is at 1930 on the 2-day. The daily is looking ready to turn at 1888. So we would see the daily could potentially paint a technical low on any close above 1896.77 today. So with the 2-day, 3-day close, you still want to see it above 1901 on the daily. That would also regain the lower first, which is at 1900. And then we can look over here to that 1910 to 1912 area with possible overall mean reversion targets back to that 1925 to 1930 area at the daily basis band. This is going to head down though. So just be aware of that. It is going to head down. And that is kind of it. Right now, I mean, the weekly on gold is actually looking, you know, it's in an area of interest for a possible reversal. It's oscillating around support, around a support and resistance zone on the daily, and right by the lower second on the weekly. So I would kind of be looking for this week to be the week that it tries to bounce, and then we track it. We never know. This could actually just be the bounce. In this case, the weekly is pretty beat up. 1920 would turn this back up, and that is above the lower first standard deviation on the weekly. So if that does turn up, and the 1920 pivot is recovered on gold, then I would be looking for some pretty strong mean reversion into the mid 1900 area at around 1950 where the basis is, and then try to test in and around these highs just above 1960 up to around 1980 to 1990, where the upper first is coming in just above there, and then come back to it. But as it stands, it does look like the upper and lower second standard deviations are typically bounce areas, and if we are going to see reversals, that's typically where they're going to come in. If we're going to see continuation, it's going to close below the lower second, and realistically it doesn't. It's got support just below at 1870 on the weekly. Yeah, and in fact there's decent support here. There's a deviation low here as well, so it would make sense to see it bounce from here. If it is going to bounce, this is going to be the week to do it. So that is going to be kind of it. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look at what is the 5-day closing. 5 days 1920 as well as it should be. 4-day 1933. 3-day is 1940. 2 days 1930. And that daily is turning there at that 1888. So yeah, that's going to pretty much do it for today. If you have any questions across the different chats here, I do see there's a few others that have jumped into the YouTube stream. For you guys over in the other streams, do you have any questions that relate to this that I can answer in a live stream? Okay. Silver? Yeah, I can look at silver. Silver's got a nice bounce on the daily here. Yeah, Very nice bounce. You know, it's could get a little bit of a double bottom here is what we might be looking at. Now, you want to see the highs taken out up here at around that $25, but you know, 22.43 is going to be the momentum pivot. Nice strong bounce towards the basis band. I would suspect that it's possible here at around the 23.40 might find some resistance. There is an order block on the daily just above there at around 23.5, and that would be that'd be the logical area to look for in lower term timeframes. Let's go ahead and take a look actually, and then I'll get into this white line you see here as well with the basis band, and it's following very closely to the basis band, I might add. You know, it's getting a little overheated on the 4-hour, but silver likes to, you know, just bounce back, mean revert down to 22.75 or so. As long as it's above that basis band and the lower first right now, I'd be looking for this to continue. And that's coming in at 22.57. Lower first because it is above these lows. Lower second, no, because it would be below these lows currently. How much room does this have left? Yeah, still upside above 22.97. 6-hour looks good. Nice reversal structure. 22.99 though. 8-hour we're looking at 23, and the 12-hour is 22.61. So on the daily here, you're probably going to see a lower term time frame pullback. This is pretty aggressive off the, this is 3 days of, you know, trying to the upside here. I would be looking for a pullback somewhere around the 23, that 23.40 to 23.50 area. It could even swing a little higher at 23.80, but I would be looking for a pullback pretty soon, at least in the lower term time frames, and then just kind of come back to it after that. Let's see. So we've got Jackson Hole. Yeah, he's just going to be given the outlook on the economy, basically. And, you know, trust me, he's well aware that what he says is probably going to have an effect on the markets. But, you know, it's more of their actions, and it might tip his hand leading into, you know, the September meeting, which is September 20th. So that's when they're going to have their rate hike decisions in place. And, you know, we're going to have further economic data coming out this month, and then there's going to be economic data in September. So, you know, we'll see what their plans are. I mean, I'm of the opinion that if you want to know my personal opinion on if he's going to hike, is that what you're asking? I don't see why he wouldn't. You know, there's no reason to be looking for a pivot right now. I mean, here's why. Let's go ahead and look at bonds. I mean, this is why he's not looking for a pivot. Right? Look at that inversion. Right? I mean, we are so deeply inverted right now that he's not looking for a pivot just yet. This is all preparation for a pivot. Yeah, it's all prep for a pivot. And they can prep for as long as they need to. And it's, yeah, I mean, here in the United States, it's the regular folks that get the short end of the stick in this scenario. Not typically the system itself. You know, if something breaks in terms of banks, you know, they're just going to do another silent bailout. They've already been doing that on the back end anyway to prolong, you know, the rate hike here. Yeah. Any other questions? Go over to Bitcoin and turn this onto a wonderful 10-second chart. Oh, look. It's a reversal structure. It's a back testing, and now it's going to fly to the moon. No, I'm just kidding. Please don't use a 10-second chart like that. Yeah. Is there any questions over in YouTube? Hi, Spin. Hi, Bobby. Hi, No Name. Yeah, if there's no questions, today's a fairly short stream then. And I will, of course, have a Bitcoin in 60 seconds video. Oh, the 30-second. Oh, God, Bobby. Degen. Let's just do it. Let's humor Bobby. 30-second chart. Oh, my God. Look at that structure. See, it's just an uptrending structure. It's uptrending to the moon. Yeah, I'll have a Bitcoin in 60 seconds video again later today. And I will have a, in between, of course, I'll have another one on Tuesday. And then I will talk to you guys in a live stream here again on Wednesday. We'll check up on some of the areas of interest that I have pointed out across the board. And, we'll see what the market will give us in terms of setups. The mean reversion setup is kind of in play right now for Bitcoin, but it's got to develop a little bit more. And it's very, 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 very likely that if we do see the lows dropped, we're heading to the areas to the downside that I just spoke of. So be aware if we do see a bit of a rush down below this weekly and lose that wick low at 25.2. It's likely it will pause around that daily support zone. But the next real targets are going to be, mid $24,000 region down to this weekly at 24.3. So 24.3 to 24.5. And then we're looking at, 23.7 to 8. And then that monthly is going to be the big one, 23.3. If we do see that area dropped, it's probably going to, head down significantly further. Not a guarantee, but highly likely even. All right. You guys have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And, of course, as always, stay safe. And with all of that said, trying to stall here so I can get the music back up. With all of that said, we will be seeing you very soon.